Good afternoon, Dr. Hickman. Many years ago, you refused my repeat prescription requests for my asthma inhalers. You told me to make an appointment to see you. I wasn't very happy. I was a fit chap, trained every day, couldn't see the point. I explained that I take a puff on my blue inhaler before training, can train to the extreme, and I had everything under control. You explained that I wasn't in control and explained why. Since that first chat, I cannot remember the last time I used my blue inhaler. I thought I was doing ace. You challenged that, and I am better now than I was at 20 years of age. I'm now 53. In short, you changed my life. You taught me to better manage my asthma. You're an amazing doctor. Thank you so much. Wow. Well, who would have thought it? An amazing doctor. It's not everybody every day that you work in the NHS that you get called an amazing doctor. Quite frankly, my job is done here. There's nothing else to say. Thank you. Goodbye. No, only joking. An amazing doctor. What does that even mean? Definition of amazing: causing great surprise or wonder, astonishing. I bet plenty of Harold Shipman's patients thought that he was an amazing doctor, and that didn't exactly end well, did it? I'm not an amazing doctor. What I did do, though, was provide that patient with basic asthma care. I didn't do anything amazing for him. It wasn't rocket science, nothing groundbreaking, nothing amazing, just the absolute basics. I provided him with the knowledge so that when he walked out my door, he knew what to do with his asthma for the 364 days of the year when he wasn't at the GP surgery. Now imagine for a second that I hadn't had that 3-minute conversation with my patient. 3 people die of asthma every day in the UK, and many, many more have life-threatening asthma attacks. Not all asthma deaths are preventable, but it is widely accepted that there are preventable factors in 90% of asthma deaths. If I'd not had that 3-minute conversation with my patient, he could easily have been yet another statistic. Patients with asthma should be prescribed 2 inhalers. One is their preventer inhaler that they are supposed to take regularly every day. This dampens down the inflammation in the airways, keeps their airways open, essentially keeps them alive, and stops them having to rely on their blue inhaler. The blue inhaler or rescue inhaler gives them an instant relief when they are breathless by relaxing the muscles around their airways, but does nothing to treat the underlying inflammation. The inflammation that builds up and eventually leads to an asthma attack if not treated, or worst case scenario, death. A patient with asthma should get through 1 preventer inhaler a month and 1 blue reliever inhaler a year. Well-controlled asthma is defined as not having symptoms of asthma at all. So where is it all going wrong? According to Asthma UK, 3.24 million people in the UK are still not receiving the basic asthma care, and patients are not being given the right message. The message that if they take their steroid inhaler morning and night, and in some cases just once a day, they dramatically increase their chances of a life with no symptoms of asthma. A life where they don't run the risk of a life-threatening asthma attack and reduce their chances dramatically of dying from asthma. Patients, because they are human, and just like you and I, let's face it, forget to take their preventer inhaler. Not only am I a GP, but I also teach behaviour change to help people make habits stick. Can I remember to take a 3-day course of antibiotics? Can I hell? But is it that they simply forget to take their inhalers? Or is it that the message hasn't been given, or if it has, it hasn't sunk in? 12 years ago, I was a GP with little interest in asthma. I would think nothing when prescribing a steroid inhaler to also prescribe a rescue or reliever inhaler every month. It never occurred to me that this might be a sign that the patient's asthma might be poorly controlled, that they weren't taking their preventer inhaler either at all or properly, and they were symptomatic on a daily basis, relying on their blue inhaler for relief. In 2009, at my first meeting as a GP partner, we divvied up our clinical roles. I said categorically that I would do anything apart from respiratory, as I really didn't understand it, and in fact failed respiratory physiology at university. Despite my protestations, I was given the role of respiratory lead. I embraced the opportunity, knowing full well nobody else was going to take it on, and my passion and love for the subject started there. Fast forward to 2012, and I found myself at the training day to be part of the first ever national review into asthma deaths, or NRAD. This was to be my light bulb moment, my epiphany. I watched the lead of the audit, Dr. Mark Levy, talk with such passion about why something had to change. Patients were continuing to die of asthma every day in the UK, and many more were having life-threatening asthma attacks. His drive and energy was infectious. Being part of NRAD, though, was a bit like watching the Titanic for the fourth or fifth time. You know what's going to happen, but there's a part of you that wishes the Titanic doesn't hit the iceberg, or in this case, the patient doesn't die. The patient who had been prescribed blue inhaler after blue inhaler without anybody checking whether or not she was taking preventer steroid inhaler. The patient who, after her last trip to the asthma nurse, was found dead with the blue inhaler gripped in her hand. Her inflamed airways closed shut. She was the same age as me. It still makes me feel sick when I think of the terror she must have experienced as her airways closed shut for good in the last minutes of her life. She was let down at every single stage of her care, let down by amazing GPs and nurses who I know did not set out to cause harm, but ultimately did not identify what she needed in her appointments and may not have provided the most basic level of asthma care. Most GPs will get allocated 10-minute appointments to see their patients. Asthma may only be one part of that 10 minutes. Once the patient has walked down the corridor, taken off their coat, settled themselves down, talked about the weather and their poorly dog, there's often considerably less time than 10 minutes. A few GPs will get a bit more, maybe 15 minutes, and a handful will get less. But imagine if we ran our surgeries like teachers ran their lockdown parent evenings. Hands up, anybody who had a lockdown parents evening. They were great, weren't they? Whoever designed that platform was genius. They recognised a few key things. Teachers are busy. They have very stressful jobs looking after our kids. There is nothing that a parent wants to do more than talk about their little darlings for hours on end to their teacher. But what happens if this is allowed? The teacher runs later and later and later. Other parents get angry, the teachers get angry, and the next day they are exhausted and struggle to cope with the demands of a full classroom of our kids. So what happens after 6, 8, 10 minutes, or whatever allotted time has passed with the teacher? 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Blank screen, time's up, genius. At the end of the 6 minutes, my husband and I were looking at each other with shocked incredulity because we knew exactly what was going to happen. I had read the instructions beforehand. We were warned. We knew the teacher had other parents to see, other conversations to be had, and we couldn't cover anything in a 6-minute slot. We can book a longer appointment. The school had contracted with us, and it worked. So how many of your GPs have contracted with you? Explained beforehand that your appointment is only 10 minutes long and you will be given a 1-minute countdown and the appointment will end. I hazard a guess that the closest any of you have got to a contract is a notice in the waiting room saying something along the lines of one patient, one problem, one appointment. Because more often than not, when you go to your GP, you can go on for as long as you like. Because just as we love to talk about our kids, we love to talk about ourselves even more. And because there's never a contract in place, few GPs, and there are a few exceptions to that, are going to tell you to shut up. GPs constantly moan about not having enough time with their patients. Patients constantly moan that they want more time with the GP. We all want more time. In fact, the Royal College of GPs' core vision for the future of general practice is to put an end to the standard 10-minute GP consultation to allow GPs to spend more time with patients with complex needs and provide a more holistic approach to patient care. But are longer appointments really the solution? And if implemented, could this put even more strain on a system that is already collapsing under the strain of sicker patients needing and wanting appointments? What if we could accept the 10 minutes that we are given to see our patients? Recognise that yes, some patients will need considerably more time than 10 minutes. The patient who's having an asthma attack needs a nebulizer, an ambulance called. The patient that needs to have an end-of-life discussion with their GP, or a patient that's having bad news broken to them about a new cancer diagnosis. Yes, they will need longer, but many won't. What if GPs don't need more time, but were able to establish the one thing in that 10 minutes that their patient needs? Work with them to identify it and provide good basic care. Identify the one thing that may end up saving the patient's life. What if a contract had been agreed beforehand that after the 10 minutes were up, this would signify the end, and assuming they didn't need urgent attention, they could book a follow-up appointment at their convenience, whether that be face-to-face, via text, phone call, or a video link. We can get so engrossed in ticking boxes and earning income points that we can sometimes forget the patient sat in front of us and what they truly need and what basic good care looks like for them. Take a new diagnosis of asthma, for example. When that patient is starting out on their journey of a life living with asthma, what if a GP could identify the one thing that ensures their patient knows why they are taking inhalers daily? Or identify the one thing they could do for their patient during the consultation that ensures that they know what to do in an emergency? Or identify the one thing that ensures their patient knows how to take their inhaler? What if the patients, the statistics, who made up the cohort of the National Review into Asthma Deaths had known how to take their inhalers, had known why they were taking a Preventra inhaler daily, and had known what to do in an emergency? Could there have been some very different outcomes? In the next 3 minutes, I'm going to demonstrate 3 things that, if covered in every patient's appointment who has asthma, could, I believe, lead to significant improvement of asthma care in the UK and start patients off on the right foot on their asthma journey. This took me less than 3 minutes to deliver and is the absolute basic knowledge that all patients with asthma should know and understand. It is our duty as their clinician to ensure that they do. Imagine a world where patients with a new diagnosis of asthma left their doctor's surgery not grateful that they'd spent an extra 5 minutes with their GP, but grateful that they knew how to take their inhalers, why they were taking them, and what they needed to do in case of an emergency. Grateful because the GP had identified the most important aspect of their care in that 10 minutes. The one thing that was going to have the biggest impact on their asthma care, and the one thing that might even prevent them from dying or having a life-threatening asthma attack. They didn't feel fobbed off because they knew beforehand what was coming. They had contracted with their GP. They had been allocated a 10-minute appointment, and when the time was up, time was up until the next appointment, a world where preventable asthma deaths became a thing of the past and never an event. When a patient is diagnosed with asthma, they are starting on a journey that for the majority will last a lifetime. If that patient starts off on the wrong foot and travels down the wrong path, it is unlikely to be a smooth one. They may feel alone, confused, scared, and unsupported. The information they received at diagnosis may have been minimal, and they leave with no idea how to manage their asthma outside of the GP surgery or A&E. Equally, they may have been bombarded with untailored information, given leaflets, access to videos on inhaler technique, signposted to Asthma UK, the Right Breathe app, and handed a personal asthma action plan that is 4 times more likely to keep them out of hospital if they use it. Living with asthma is rarely a smooth journey. I believe, though, it can and should be a lot smoother for our patients. It is our duty of care to ensure it is a smooth journey as possible, starting them on the right foot as they walk out of our door after diagnosis and down the right path, knowing how to take their inhaler, why they're taking it, and what to do in an emergency. We must minimize the speed bumps and the potholes, steer them away from the cliff edge, keep them on the right path, and guide or carry them when they need us most. We must support patients to accept their asthma, ensuring they are not burdened by it. And if we get basic care right from the outset, we may just end up transforming a patient's life and receiving an email telling us that we are an amazing